My mother-in-law announced at dinner, "You'll never be part of this family." Then I pulled out a letter she hid for 20 years. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I had learned to read the signs long ago. The way Margaret's fingers drummed against the mahogany dining table when she was preparing for an attack. The particular tilt of her chin when she wanted everyone to witness her performance. The deliberate pause before she spoke, ensuring all eyes were on her. Tonight, all the signs were there. The dining room glowed with warm candlelight, casting dancing shadows across the faces of David's family. Our children, Emma and Michael, sat quietly between their Uncle James and Aunt Sarah. David's father would have loved this scene. 3 generations gathered around the table he'd built with his own hands 23 years ago. But Robert had been gone for 2 years now, and with him had died whatever fragile peace had existed between Margaret and me. "Pass the roast, dear," Margaret said to me, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold as January frost. She had perfected this tone over the 15 years I'd been married to her son. A voice that sounded pleasant to others but carried undertones only I could hear. I handed her the platter, my fingers steady despite the familiar knot forming in my stomach. David caught my eye from across the table and smiled, oblivious to the tension crackling between his mother and me. He was telling James about Michael's soccer tournament, his face animated with pride. My husband, good and kind as he was, had never quite learned to see his mother's manipulations. Perhaps he didn't want to. "Sarah, you look absolutely radiant," Margaret continued, turning her attention to David's sister. "Marriage suits you so well. It's wonderful when a woman finds her proper place in a family, isn't it?" The words seemed innocent enough, but I felt their sting. Sarah beamed, unaware that she was being used as a weapon against me. She had married into the wealthy Richardson family just 6 months ago, and Margaret had been singing her praises ever since, always within my earshot, always with that pointed emphasis on belonging. "Mom's been such a blessing," Sarah gushed. "She helped me understand all the family traditions, made sure I felt welcome from day one. I don't know what I would have done without her guidance." Margaret's smile was radiant. "A mother knows how to nurture the right relationships," she said, her gaze sliding to me. "Some bonds are natural, meant to be. Others..." She let the sentence hang in the air like smoke. I cut my meat with careful precision, each movement deliberate and controlled. In my purse, folded carefully in a silk handkerchief, lay a letter that had changed everything I thought I knew about this family. I had found it 3 weeks ago while helping Margaret clean out Robert's study, tucked between the pages of his old Bible. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. 20 years it had waited in that Bible. 20 years of Margaret's lies. "Emma, darling, tell Grandma about your piano recital," David said, trying to draw our 12-year-old into the conversation. Emma's face lit up. She adored her grandmother, as children do, seeing only the cookies and gifts, not the subtle cruelty that lived beneath Margaret's smile. "I played Chopin's Minute Waltz, Grandma. Mom helped me practice every day for 3 months." "How lovely," Margaret said, but her attention was already drifting. Though I do worry about children spending too much time on frivolous pursuits. Robert always believed in focusing on what truly matters. Family legacy, proper values. Her eyes found mine again. Some people understand this instinctively. Others never quite grasp what it means to truly belong. The familiar ache settled in my chest. For 15 years, I had endured these subtle attacks, these carefully crafted exclusions. When David and I were first married, I had tried everything to win Margaret's approval. I learned her favorite recipes, remembered every family tradition, sent thoughtful cards on every occasion. Nothing worked. She made sure I knew in 1,000 small ways that I was an outsider who had infiltrated her perfect family. Robert had such specific ideas about family, Margaret continued, her voice taking on the reverent tone she always used when speaking of her deceased husband. He knew exactly what kind of woman belonged in this family. He could spot authenticity from miles away. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. She was invoking Robert now, using his memory as a weapon. It was a line she'd never crossed before. Not quite this directly. David frowned slightly. "Mom, what do you mean by that?" "Oh, nothing specific," Margaret said with a wave of her hand. "Just that some people have that natural quality, that sense of belonging. Take Sarah, for instance. Your father would have adored her immediately. She just fits, you know?" The implication hung heavy in the air. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, finally sensing the undercurrent. James cleared his throat. Even the children seemed to pick up on the tension, Emma's bright chatter dying away. "Mom," David's voice carried a warning edge. "I think it's quite all right," I said quietly, setting down my fork. "Let her finish." Margaret's eyes glittered with triumph. She had been building to this moment all evening, all year, perhaps all 15 years. "I'm simply saying that family isn't just about marriage certificates or shared names. True belonging comes from something deeper. It's about understanding your place, respecting tradition, being the kind of person who enhances rather than..." She paused delicately. "Well, some people simply don't have that quality. No matter how long they try, no matter how they pretend, they never truly become part of the fabric of a family." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the soft clink of James setting down his wine glass, Emma's quick intake of breath. David's face had gone pale. "Mother, that's enough." But Margaret wasn't finished. 20 years of hidden resentment, of carefully controlled animosity, was finally breaking free. Her mask was slipping, revealing the cruel satisfaction beneath. "I'm not saying anything that isn't true, David. Some of us have been pretending for far too long." She turned her cold gaze fully on me, and I saw the naked hatred she had hidden so carefully from her son. "You can sit at this table. You can take our name. You can play house all you want. But you will never be part of this family. You don't belong here. You never have, and you never will." The words hit the air like a physical blow. Sarah gasped audibly. James pushed back from the table. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked between her grandmother and me. Michael, only 10 but wise beyond his years, reached for my hand under the table. David shot to his feet. "Mother, how dare you?" "It's all right," I said again, my voice eerily calm. I squeezed Michael's hand gently, then reached for my purse. "There's something I need to share." Margaret's triumph faltered slightly as she watched me withdraw the silk handkerchief, unfolding it with the same careful precision I had used to cut my meat. "3 weeks ago, I found this in your husband's Bible," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "It's a letter he wrote 20 years ago, shortly after David and I announced our engagement." Margaret's face went white. I unfolded the letter, the paper crackling softly in the silence. The handwriting was unmistakably Robert's. The same careful script that had written birthday cards for the children, shopping lists, love notes to his wife. "Should I read it aloud?" I asked, looking directly at Margaret. "Or would you like to tell everyone what it says?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Margaret whispered, but her voice shook. I cleared my throat and began to read. "My dearest future daughter-in-law, by the time you read this, you and David will be planning your wedding. I wanted you to know how thrilled Margaret and I are to welcome you into our family. David has never been happier, and seeing him with you has filled my heart with such joy. I know sometimes joining a new family can feel overwhelming. When Margaret married me, she worried constantly about fitting in, about whether my parents would accept her. I want to make sure you never have those doubts. You are not just marrying David. You are becoming our daughter. Truly and completely. This house will always be your home. This table will always have a place for you. These traditions will be yours to carry forward and change as you see fit. Margaret has been so excited about having another daughter. She talks constantly about all the things she wants to share with you, all the ways she plans to help you feel welcomed and cherished. She's worried about seeming too eager, about overwhelming you with her enthusiasm. I keep telling her not to hold back, that love and acceptance should never be rationed. I want you to know that from the moment David brought you home, I could see why he fell in love with you. Your kindness, your strength, your gentle way with people, these qualities will enrich our family immeasurably. You belong here, completely and unconditionally. You are already part of us, and nothing will ever change that. Welcome home, daughter. With all my love and anticipation of the joy you'll bring to our family, Robert. The silence that followed was absolute. I could see Margaret's hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. David's mouth hung open in shock. Sarah was staring at her mother-in-law with dawning horror. He asked me to give this to you at your engagement party, Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible. But You kept it, I finished quietly. For 20 years, you let me believe that he disapproved of me, that I was an unwelcome intruder in his family. You let me struggle and doubt and blame myself when all along he had written this. David sank back into his chair as if his legs had given out. Mom, how could you? You don't understand, Margaret said desperately. He didn't know. He couldn't see. See what? I asked, my voice still calm but with an edge of steel. That I would love his son with everything in me? That I would give him grandchildren who adore him? That I would care for him in his final illness while you fell apart? What exactly was he blind to? Margaret's composure cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone whose carefully constructed world was crumbling. He was my husband, she sobbed. My family. You came in and took it all away. David stopped needing me. Stopped calling as much. The grandchildren love you more than me. I lost everything when you came into this family. So you made sure I never felt like I belonged, I said quietly. You made me pay for crimes I never committed. David was staring at his mother as if seeing her for the first time. All these years, all the little comments, the way you'd exclude her from family decisions, the way you'd praise other people's wives in front of her, it was all deliberate. I protected this family, Margaret said fiercely, but her voice cracked. I maintained our standards, our traditions. You lied, James said suddenly, speaking for the first time since dinner began. Dad loved her. We all saw it. He used to brag about her to his friends, about how proud he was to have such a wonderful daughter-in-law. And you poisoned that. Sarah was crying openly now. The things you said, about how some people just belong naturally. You made me feel guilty for being accepted when she wasn't. Emma, brave little Emma, spoke up in a voice that shook with emotion. Grandma, why would you be mean to Mama? She's the best mama in the world. Margaret looked around the table at the faces staring back at her, faces filled with shock, disappointment, and dawning understanding. The pedestal she had built for herself over decades was crumbling, and there was nowhere to hide. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the silk handkerchief. I'm not sharing this to hurt you, Margaret, I said quietly. I'm sharing it because I'm tired of carrying shame that was never mine to bear. I'm tired of my children seeing their mother treated as less than, and thinking that's normal. I'm tired of pretending that your cruelty is love. What do you want? Margaret whispered. I stood up slowly, my legs steady beneath me for the first time in 20 years. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to stop. Stop the comments, stop the exclusions, stop trying to make me smaller so you can feel bigger. I looked around the table at my family, because they were my family, letter or no letter. I belong here. I have always belonged here, and I'm done pretending otherwise. David stood and walked around the table to me, taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you." "You couldn't see what she didn't want you to see," I replied, squeezing his hands. "But now you do." Margaret sat at the head of the table, looking suddenly old and fragile. The power she had wielded through manipulation and emotional cruelty had evaporated in the space of a few minutes. Her family was looking at her with new eyes, seeing the person she had hidden beneath the mask of the devoted mother. "I did love your father," she said finally, her voice broken. "Everything I did was to honor his memory." "No," I said gently but firmly. "Everything you did was to control a narrative that existed only in your mind. Robert's memory would be honored by love, acceptance, and truth, not by 20 years of lies." I gathered my purse and looked around the table one last time. Emma and Michael stood to follow me, their young faces serious with understanding beyond their years. David hesitated, torn between his wife and his mother. "Stay," I told him softly. "Talk to her. Try to understand each other. But I'm done pretending that her pain justifies my suffering." As we walked toward the door, I heard Margaret's voice, small and desperate. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I turned back to her, this woman who had made my life so difficult for so many years. She looked broken, defeated, stripped of the weapons she had used so effectively for so long. "I know you are," I said quietly. "But sorry doesn't give me back 20 years of feeling unwelcome in my own family. Sorry doesn't undo the damage to my children, who grew up watching their grandmother treat their mother like an outsider. Sorry is just a word, Margaret. What matters now is what you do next." In the car, driving through the darkness toward our own home, Michael asked quietly, "Mama, why did Grandma say those things?" I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, this serious little boy who had held my hand under the table when the world exploded around us. "Sometimes people hurt others because they're hurting inside themselves," I said. "That doesn't make it right, but it helps explain why." "Will she be nicer now?" Emma asked hopefully. I considered the question carefully. "I don't know, sweetheart, but it doesn't matter anymore. We know who we are and we know we belong in this family. No one can take that away from us ever again." And for the first time in 20 years, I truly believed it. The letter that Robert had written so many years ago hadn't just revealed Margaret's deception, it had revealed something far more important. It had shown me that I had been loved and accepted from the very beginning. The doubt, the shame, the constant feeling of not being enough. None of it had been real. It had all been constructed by someone else's fear and insecurity. As we pulled into our driveway, I thought about Robert, gone these 2 years now. I wished I could thank him for his words, for the love he had tried to give me even though it had been stolen before it could reach me. But maybe, in a way, his letter had found its purpose at exactly the right moment. Maybe some truths are meant to wait until we're strong enough to handle them. The next morning, David came home with red-rimmed eyes and a resolve I hadn't seen in years. "We talked all night," he said simply. "She's agreed to start therapy, and she wants to write you a letter. A real apology, not just words." "And if she doesn't change?" I asked. "Then we limit our contact until she does," he said firmly. "I'm done enabling her behavior. Our children will not grow up thinking any of this was normal or acceptable." Margaret did write that letter, and she did start therapy. Change came slowly, grudgingly, and not without setbacks. But the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly that night at dinner. I was no longer the outsider begging for acceptance. I was a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less. Sometimes I still take out Robert's letter and read it, especially on difficult days. His words remind me that belonging isn't something that can be granted or withheld by others. It's something we claim for ourselves, something we know in our hearts to be true. I belonged to that family from the moment I fell in love with David, from the moment I said yes to his proposal, from the moment I took their name and chose to build a life with them. A hidden letter and 20 years of lies couldn't change that fundamental truth. But sometimes when we're strong enough to handle it, the truth finds a way to set us free.